Once in a blue moon, a truly unique form of ARG makes an appearance on the internet. These mysteries can take their platform by storm, if only for a short while. As their popularity and intrigue rises, so falls their uniqueness, as similar ARGs and stories come along to experiment with this new style of storytelling, to ride the wave of popularity generated by the first of its kind, or even to simply cash in on the intrigue. What's even rarer than these unique forms of ARGs are those that come after that successfully alter the formula to bring something new to the established style. Enter Gemini Home Entertainment. A seemingly innocuous company producing some rather bizarre and downright disturbing informational videos. These videos, beginning as your typical informational documentary regarding a variety of subjects, morph into the abnormal, filled with information far from typical. These videos, leading us down a rabbit hole of cosmic proportions, document a shift in normality and a slow and steady mutation. Before we begin, I want to state that all theories and speculations are just my own personal observations and opinions. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, as I could very well be incorrect. Now, let's start from the beginning. Let me say, the title is a bit of an understatement. The documentary starts off rather mundane, listing off animals that an unsuspecting viewer, if they're from those regions of Wisconsin mentioned, might actually be familiar with. All the while, soft and relaxing music plays in the background. The music suddenly cuts, and we're greeted to a deep red Wisconsin. This series has introduced us to a few key elements that we'll see reappearing moving forward. The most obvious is Gemini Home Entertainment itself. The corporation, behind all of the videos to varying degrees, is responsible for the publishing and distribution of all the content we'll be seeing. Then there are the anomalous creatures, the woodcrawlers, the nature's mockery, and the fake people. Judging from the caption beneath the footage, the video would have us believe that the entity is known as a nature's mockery, though future videos will negate this claim and will instead show this creature as a woodcrawler. The individual filming the spliced-in sections, a character who will later come to be known as Jack Dean, is the closest we'll get to a protagonist in this series. We'll touch on his story throughout the video as he appears. But for now, let's move on to the second video uploaded by Gemini Home Entertainment. Storm Safety Tips, Health and Safety Informational Video. The apparent goal of this video is to educate the local population on how to best prepare for an incoming heavy storm. A new company, ARG Technologies, is behind this tape. This company, which recommends installing early warning systems to detect incoming storms, also recommends the building of a storm bunker to very strict specifications. Including an aluminum hemisphere in the center of the bunker, and a shortwave radio within 4 to 5 feet of the hemisphere. The video distorts, and the steps seem all the more ominous. Let's take a step back and analyze what we've watched. Harbinge in ARG Technologies is a clear play on the word harbinger, which means a person or thing that announces or signals the approach of another. But what is this other? Who, or what, is ARG Technologies heralding the approach of? The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alarm as an early warning system for approaching storms. The company recommends the use of the albedo alar Albedo is a term referring to how well a surface reflects solar energy, or the energy of an object that emits light. The formula itself requires a hemisphere object, which would explain the aluminum hemisphere. While this may seem insignificant now, this idea of energy being emitted by a celestial body will come into play later on in the series. The bunker specifications also seem designed to protect us, not quite from a storm, but from whatever it is that is tunneling under our feet, mentioned towards the end of the video, lest they break into the bunker and attack those on the side. Both the lights in the field and the rumbling under our feet will come back to play in future videos. A documentary on the deepest trench in the ocean takes us off land and into the Marianas Trench, specifically the Challenger Deep. As is the norm, the video slowly shifts from the normal and into the abnormal. Loud, unearthly rumblings can be heard deep in the oceans. We'll learn of the Marianas Trench and the Nemesia Tunnel, a tunnel that does not exist in our reality. The video then shifts to deep sea cameras down on the ocean floor. We can hear the unearthly rumblings once more, and we see, for the first time, the anomalous glowing entities in their full glory. They appear to be distinctly different from the white-legged, arachnid-like creatures seen in World's Weirdest Animals. Could they be separate species, or two distinct subspecies of the same animal? Why they are in the Marianas Trench is unclear, though their overall purpose will become clear within the next few videos. Artificial computer learning, a video diverging from the previous informational videos and into a demonstrational video by the company Regnite Computing that showcases artificial computer learning. In this video, we learn of Regnite's venture into the field of artificial intelligence using, quote, revolutionary methods that remain vague and unexplained. Regnite tests this artificial intelligence by having it create stories. The story introduces us to a Jack and a Mary who are traveling over a river to some secret. The second iteration shows us that Jack and Mary are searching for a secret place, and that it seems that the AI can hear us or hears Jack and Mary. Let's recap the information we've learned from this video. Regnad Computing, which Regnad is danger spelled backwards, is creating an artificial intelligence using revolutionary methods they have yet to share. This AI, tasked with creating a story, begins to write about Jack and Mary trying to find their way to a secret safe place. By the third iteration, it seems Jack makes it over the river, but Mary does not. She is killed by something as her body floats down the stream, making the river run with something other than water. As Jack is fleeing, he can hear a voice coming from space. Then, another person is asking if Jack can see them. Whatever this entity is, knows Jack. I can only assume that the Mary we learned about has been transformed into something else and is now stalking Jack through the woods. Then we have listened to the silver box. My first thoughts are of the radio in the bunker, reaffirming everything we've learned from the previous video, the storm safety tips. Perhaps Jack and Mary were heading to a bunker to escape a storm, but it sounds like Mary did not quite make it. So, what happened to Jack? We know that Jack sees that the stars are moving now. He is asked if he sees the hungry eye. Then, here I am. Maybe it's possible Mary got to Jack. But what of this hungry eye? Why are the stars moving? We see what appears to be an eye of some sort. But this eye has intent and is alive. Then we see what could be a woodcrawler or a glowing identity arriving on Earth. The answers may lie in the next video uploaded by Gemini Home Entertainment entitled Our Solar System. This educational video raises questions from the very beginning. Eagle-eyed viewers might catch something amiss amongst the planetary lineup, with a 10th planet present between Neptune and Pluto. The second sign of the abnormal is in the Earth's description, being noted as being one of the only planets in our solar system to support life. In the Mars section of the video, a blurry object can be seen moving in front of the planet before the video distorts and the object disappears. With Jupiter, the big red spot is specifically mentioned not to be an eye, and as the video distorts, the text changes to, "It is an open wound." Saturn's section shows us more abnormalities. The rings of Saturn are referred to as the Gateway. All the while, a blurry planetary object draws closer to Saturn from the depths of space. Then we reach Neptune. We learn of the Great Dark Spot, being referred to as the Lens. We learn that Neptune has been mutated before the video cuts to a new celestial body, the Iris. We then watch as Neptune fires a bright light of energy from its Great Dark Spot further into the solar system. In this portion, we can hear the celestial sounds of Neptune. Mixed in with Neptune, we can distinctly hear Saturn as well, letting us know that the blurry planetary object earlier in the video was in fact Neptune drawing close to the gateway. It seems as though Neptune used the gateway to transport the woodcrawlers and the glowing identities onto Earth, as seen in the artificial computer learning video. If planets like Neptune are shifting in the solar system, that might explain the shifting of stars discussed in the fourth story iteration. The hungry eye, mentioned by the likely mutated Mary, could be one of two things: a glowing identity, or the iris itself. We can piece together the iris mutates planets. But why? What exactly does it want? Why is it sending these anomalous entities to Earth? This would also explain the diagram in the final frames, showing us either the iris itself or Neptune and its Great Dark Spot firing the beam of light and transporting the anomalous entities to Earth. What about the blurry object seen around Mars? I honestly can't tell if it's supposed to be in front of Mars or behind it. A case could be made for either of Mars's moons, Phobos or Deimos, which are named after the Greek gods of fear and terror respectively. It could also be the beam of light we saw Neptune fire from its Great Dark Spot, heading towards the Earth. Regardless of the blurry object's true identity, the filmmakers felt it necessary to remove it. Let's recap the lore we know so far, now that we have a vague understanding of the events transpiring. The Iris came into our solar system through some means, likely as an extrasolar object wandering into our system, or perhaps searching for something in our system. It infected and mutated Neptune as the closest planet of relative size, creating the Great Dark Spot, or the lens, that the Iris could focus its energy through. The Iris then used Neptune to fire a beam of light through Saturn's rings, using them as a gateway to transport anomalous beings to Earth. Along the way, it seems as though Jupiter was injured and caught by the beam of light, wounding the planet. If that's true, then the Iris would have needed to be in our solar system for quite some time, as the red spot has been observed since 1665, meaning that Neptune has been infected for quite some time. On Earth, we can see the after effects of the Iris's influence. Woodcrawlers begin infesting the world, occupying the homes of large families and building swarms, even hiding in the dark depths of the oceans. Woodcrawlers are likely tunneling through the ground as well, hence the need for a fortified bunker in the case of a storm or woodcrawler attack. Next we have nature's mockery, a subject that has been untouched since world's weirdest animals. Finally, we have the entities with glowing eyes, which have yet to be named. They have glowing eyes and tendrils similar to woodcrawlers, yet appear to be distinctly different. Then we have the case of the fake people, no doubt brought on by the entities we've seen. How they are created, or how humans' bodies are taken, is unexplained by this point. All we have is a vague association between woodcrawlers and the fake people. What is clear, however, is that Gemini Home Entertainment knows about these creatures. Given that Neptune itself is the logo, it makes us question the true intentions of this company. Regardless, it seems as though several companies are aware of these entities, and likely the Iris itself. Harbin Technologies sells early warning systems and advises people on how to best protect themselves in the event of an attack. The bunker, with a hemisphere that can reflect and disperse any light shot at it. Then we have the radio within 4 to 5 feet of the hemisphere, though all we hear from it are auditory hallucinations. Caused by what exactly? The creatures or the Iris? Something else perhaps? A distinct chime can be heard when in the presence of anomalous creatures. And in the event of an approaching storm. Then we have RegNet computing, creating an artificial intelligence using undisclosed, revolutionary methods. I get the impression something's not quite right with their revolutionary methods. Either way, their AI begins to tell the tale of Mary and Jack, the same Jack who filmed the section of World's Weirdest Animals, with Mary dying and transforming into a creature that then begins to stalk Jack. Jack flees to the safety of a bunker, but not before he hears a voice from space. It seems as though the Iris has a direct influence on the psyches of people on Earth. And given the line, "Do you see the hungry eye?" makes me think that the Iris is drawing closer to the Earth itself. We're left with several big questions. What are the glowing-eyed creatures seen in the fields in the bottom of the ocean? What are the woodcrawlers? What is nature's mockery? What does the Iris want? And where do Gemini's loyalties lie? The 5th video in the series, Camp Informational Video, sets up a recurring location for some of the future videos. This commercial-less video advertises the camp as a family-friendly getaway, though it should be noted that the camp closed at some point in the past. The camp offers the typical camp activities, though one in particular, named Harvest, occurs during their famous Lights in the Sky event. In the accommodations section, it's mentioned that the family cabins are, quote, completely burrow-free, referring to the woodcrawlers burrowing beneath the earth. The video shows an albedo alarm from Harbin Technologies, assuring the viewer that the camp is secure. It also lets us know that the camp administrators and/or owners are well aware of the Iris's effects. We cut to a section on the camp's mythology. In 1935, back during the camp's first run, strange and well-dressed men would visit the camp and make the rounds. These men would enter the camp administrator's cabin every night for years on end. One night, a deal was made with the strange men, and they left the camp, never to be seen again. Another popular mythos arose in the 30s, when campgoers began to have sightings of skinwalkers. A slideshow of individuals who answered the door are shown under the banner Vessels. Let's recap the video and try to piece together the narrative so far. Moonlight Acres was a camp that was established in 1930. At this camp, many strange occurrences litter its history and mythos. The Lights in the Sky event is something new to the series, as well as the term harvest. What exactly these lights could be are not mentioned. We know that the reopened camp is dedicated to avoiding the same pitfalls as the previous iteration, putting in place safety measures and ensuring the cabins are burrow-free. We learn about the camp's history. Back in the 1930s, a few distinct events occurred. Strange, well-dressed men began visiting the camp and would ask to enter the camp administrator's cabin every night for years. Eventually, an unknown deal was made with these men, and they never returned. Then we learn of rumors of skinwalkers roaming the area. If we look back to the world's weirdest animals, we know that woodcrawlers are known for stealing voices, and are in relation to the fake people seen. I'm wondering if these skinwalkers are woodcrawlers, and these fake people being misidentified. Then the knocking, being told not to answer the door or else you'll become a vessel just like the other camp administrators. But a vessel for the woodcrawlers or for something else entirely. We also get our first real glimpse at woodcrawlers, with what I would assume is its face appearing in the window before the door opens and a woodcrawler runs inside. It's fair to say, these creatures are distinctly different from the glowing identities we've seen previously. In a sharp divergence from the typical video entry, the Lethal Omen video is a commercial for the very real video game of the same name. Stylized as a PS1 video game, this Gemini-themed game is based in Moonlight Acres. Players take control of an unnamed character as they explore the desolate camp, and are given the option to pursue several different endings. The game synthesizes much of the lore and plot we've learned about so far in the series, also adding in new information and aspects of the lore as well. Before we dive into the game itself, let's look at what information the commercial has to offer. It's mentioned in the commercial that Lethal Omen uses the same revolutionary artificial intelligence we've seen on display in the artificial computer learning video, which would explain the integration of the anomalous entities and events we've come to see throughout the series. The game itself is said to be available in stores worldwide, specifically on Regnad Computing personal computers. Before we jump into the game itself, I'd like to warn the viewers that, due to the shifting textures present in the game, feelings of vertigo may overcome sensitive viewers. Please be aware as we move forward. Overall, the game features 5 endings. Before we look at these distinct endings, let's take a look at the pieces of lore, new and old, we can find scattered around the map. Towards the end of the road, in the initial spawn area, a sign from Moonlight Acres can be found. After collecting all the keys in the initial zone, we gain entrance into Moonlight Acres itself. A bulletin board can be seen on entry, advertising the Lights in the Sky event, happening that evening at around 9:30 p.m. We also see an arrow pointing towards a blurry object on a photograph. I would assume this is likely an image of the iris. A second message reads something to the effect of, "Remember to bring your SIV." Inside the 6 cabins we can enter are some VHS tapes and some strange pieces of technology. 2 VHS tapes relating to the storm safety tips video can be found, one being an actual copy of the video on a VHS tape, while another is the albedo alarm setting video. On a third VHS tape is a drawing of the tech, appearing to be similar to a style of Polaroid camera. A fourth gives us the name for this technology, the Sleep Image Visualizer. It appears that the user would connect their Sleep Image Visualizer, or their SIV, to their computer using a cord, and likely would record their dreams. As further evidence, one monitor, which can be turned on by shooting it, will show us the SIV in action for a few brief moments. It should also be noted that the bulletin boards seem to ask the campers to bring their civs to the Lights in the Sky event. The final 2 cabins are in disarray. Shooting a monitor in one prompts a short video to play of Adam Levich's dreams prior to him becoming a vessel as seen in the camp information video. The cabin directly across has a massive crack in the flooring. A strange texture is inside this fissure as well. Moving forward, after dispatching some enemies near the archery targets, a newspaper article detailing Moonlight Acres can be found on the ground. Campgoers distraught after Moonlight Acres' famous Lights in the Sky event is abruptly cancelled. If the event is cancelled, yet the bulletin board is still advertising it, I would say that by the point of the game, the camp has been closed down. A second article underneath makes mention of the disappearance of Jordan Barnes in June of that month, having likely gone missing at Moonlight Acres. Some partial text appears to imply that disappearances across Canada have been rising in the previous months. However, it does end with an interesting note, posing the question, could these people be victims of mass hysteria? Overall, Jordan's disappearance seems to have contributed to the abrupt cancellation of the Lights in the Sky event, and even the possible closure of the campgrounds. Moving towards the administrator's cabin, we can see the albedo alarm system next to a storm shelter bunker. Inside the cabin itself, we can find rows of VHS tapes, likely taken from the SIV recordings. All around the walls are images of the camp. We have an image of the original camp entrance, dated to what I believe says 1982. Camp staff group photo dated 1984, and Northside swimming pool dated 1988. Several older photographs of the camp's original operation are hanging on the walls as well. Heading out and into the more forested area of the campgrounds, we're prompted with another kill all enemies directive before seeing all enemies dead. Heading towards a clearing, we can see a polygonal mess using the same textures we've seen inside the cabin's fissure. In this mess of polygons is an enemy NPC, as if the NPC was mutated into this weird mesh. After this, the first real ending of the game begins. We can see an enemy NPC shambling towards us, almost like a fake person we've seen before. As soon as he appears, we are prompted to run. The albedo alarm begins chiming to alert us of an incoming storm. The bunker itself is now open and can be entered. Outside, we can hear the sounds of the storm raging and the alarm chiming. The atmosphere begins to glow, brighter and brighter, until we reappear back outside at dusk. Wandering back towards the entrance of the camp, we can hear the sounds of someone yelling for help. The person, however, is not real. And over the horizon rises the iris. The second ending can be accessed by killing both groups of enemies and entering into the administrator's cabin. Heading back to the area with monitors, a door opens up on the upper wall of the small room. After jumping onto the shelving, we can then jump into the door into the secret room. A pile of monitors, couches, and VHS tapes are piled up in the back of this room. 3 notes can be read. It is looking into me. Wants to eat the camp. I fear the men may return. My face is going away. I hear voices. I hear voices. The spot on my neck has grown. There is a bonfire tonight. I will stay in my bedroom. Lights in the skies tonight. I have been told that the men will be present. Maybe it will leave me alone now. These appear to be from the same person, detailing how something is looking into them, and that this something wants to eat the camp. They fear the men, possibly referring to the strange, well-dressed men seen in the camp informational video. If so, that could date these notes back to the 1930s. They also mention hearing voices, that a spot on their neck is growing, and that they'll be secluding themselves. Upon turning around, we are greeted by a mannequin whose face follows us around. I'd like to point out how odd these mannequins are. Compared to everything else in the game, their polygon count is considerably higher and more complex than any other object or asset in the game. It's almost as if they don't really belong here, yet have made their way in regardless. This is also the only ending where we are shown actual video. The third ending has the player running through the game as usual, though when they arrive at the polygonal mess, they'll need to take an obscured route into the family cabins area. There, they'll be able to walk onto a wall, onto the roof of a cabin, and climb up a tree to reach a secret 4th key. After collecting it and heading back to the spawn area, a target will now be on the ground. Shooting it will open the obstruction blocking the road, leading us down a previously untraversable path. As seen, walking down it gives a text, "You are not meant to be here," with an image of a crying face above storm clouds. Before the game crashes, we can see a street sign that reads, "Profit." The 4th ending, activated by shooting all of the targets at the archery area, opens up a secret passageway back in the spawn area. In this area, an archway leading to some kind of altar greets the player. If the player heads towards the back of the secret area, a pathway to a hole in the earth can be followed. Near this hole, the sounds of the glowing-eyed creatures can be heard. Otherworldly mutagens spill out from this hole in the earth, using the same texture as the fissure in the cabin and on the polygonal mess. Jumping into the hole is the only way to progress, which leads to a game over screen. The 5th and final ending combines a couple steps from the previous endings. The archery targets must again be shot, and the key once again must be collected. The player must then return to the obscured altar area, where enemy NPCs will be lined up along the archway. A few seconds later, the game resumes at dusk. The sky is a dark red, and the camp is considerably different as the trees rise into the sky. Signs greet the player as they walk down their only path. Shifting tendons shape anatomy. There are fewer livestock now. Wretched hands tap my window. A stranger's claws scrape the walls. As the player walks, enemy NPCs can be seen watching them as they push along. Once again, we enter into the administrator's cabin, though we have to knock before entering. The floorboards creak while I sleep, growing cracks leak with red. The field has eyes, burning deep. They are becoming restless. What can we glean from this game? We know that Regnet Computing is using their revolutionary AI to construct the basis for the game engine, which would place the game later in the timeline than the artificial computer learning video, and after the storm safety tips video, as the VHS tapes can be seen throughout the game. We see the introduction of a new technology, the Sleep Image Visualizer, that appears to record dreams. We know that the latest Lights in the Sky event was abruptly cancelled, and the camp was seemingly shut down. Judging from the photos in the admin's cabin, the camp was likely open as late as 1988 before its second or first closure. We know that the bunker has been created to protect people from the woodcrawler swarms, though it seems to varying degrees of success. We see the introduction of fake people talking, with this one yelling for help and using the same mutated texture seen on the polygonal mess and spreading from the cave. It can be assumed that the woodcrawlers and the glowing identities nest and grow within the earth, corrupting the planet from the inside out. It can also be assumed that the mutation can infect humans. Now we have two instances of humans being transformed, either into what I would assume is a woodcrawler with Mary, or into this mesh with the enemy NPC inside of it. How they are related is unclear at this point. The signs point towards the campgrounds as being a feeding ground for the woodcrawlers, with them becoming restless after the camp's closure. Due to this, their main source of food became diminished. This likely led to the creatures venturing into neighboring areas in search of more victims, to allow their mutation to spread further. In the final scene, based on the knocking in the television screen, we can assume that the player has been transformed into a woodcrawler. If this is the case, then it's almost certain that Mary from the ACL video was transformed as well. Finally, we see the iris near Earth for the first time, rising above the horizon. The next entry is a return to form with an informational video entitled Jack Wilder's Wilderness Survival Guide. This video, created by the Jack Dean we've been following from video to video, educates the viewer on how to best survive and stay safe while out in the wilderness. As with the previous videos, the informational short starts off with sensible knowledge before taking a turn. During the section detailing how to best deal with dangerous creatures, we see the silhouette of a bear do that. In the Things to Avoid Plant Life section, we learn about a plant introduced in the very first entry, Nature's Mockery. Its symptoms: hallucinations, sudden muscular paralysis, body disfigurement, and flesh decay. Looking further into the image, we can see the outline of a person's face, and given the symptoms of body disfigurement and flesh decay, means that this plant was, at one point, human. With this in mind, we can now say that the mutated mess we saw in Lethal Omen was, in fact, Nature's Mockery mutated from an enemy NPC. Later, in the Things to Avoid Sound section, we hear auditory hallucinations, which use the same sound of "help me" as heard in Lethal Omen. During the campfire section, if we cannot get our campfire to start, we are to quote, "follow the lights." We see the same fake person and world's weirdest animals yelling for help out in a field. Judging from that final shot, we can assume that this video leads into the world's weirdest animals footage we saw, confirming that it was Jack Dean filming the house. We learn of possible woodcrawlers/skinwalkers masquerading as animals. We also learn more about the nature's mockery, a topic seemingly forgotten for quite some time. The plants, as mentioned previously, seem to turn its human hosts into a mutated mess. Finally, we see the advice of forcefully ripping a foreign object from the body, in case of infection. What exactly is it that has forced itself into a human body? And could it have something to do with the mutation into nature's mockery? The next entry is the instructional tape seen playing on computer monitors around Moonlight Acres in the Lethal Omen video game. This tape, detailing how to use the sleep image visualizer, allows us to peek into the minds of individuals using the product. Interspersed within the instructional sections are short recordings of Civ dream recording sessions. In these dream sequences, several odd and surreal scenes play out. The video also includes the dreams of Jack Dean, who has apparently slept for 3 days straight. The backward speech in Adrian Gordon's dream sequence is muffled and difficult to distinguish.
This part we call a hot trajectory, or high energy hot because it does dip inside of Earth's orbit.
All that can be definitively extracted is reference to some object dipping into the Earth's orbit. While it can't be confirmed, this does sound an awful lot like the iris. The imagery of the iris also seems to indicate the rogue planet's presence around the Earth, or, as the video possibly indicates, could be dreams of future events as the iris draws closer. Faceless, mannequin-like people also make appearances in a few dreams, tying back to Lethal Omen. Who they are and what they want is not made clear. The case could be made that these are the well-dressed men seen stalking around the campgrounds, but this is more speculation than solid fact. I would also speculate that Moonlight Acres had some sort of deal with Harbinge Technologies due to their use of Harbinge security systems and the abundant use of the Civ. The dates on this video, as well as a photo posted by Gemini Home Entertainment, gives us somewhat of a timeline for Jack Dean's whereabouts in the series. In terms of chronology, I would say this is Jack Dean's third chronological appearance outside of his mention in artificial computer learning. Prior to his involvement in the Civ testing, he began creating his wilderness survival guide, which seemingly leads directly into World's Weirdest Animals. The article notes he disappeared in early May, meaning that after his Civ session, or as a product of this session, Jack disappears. His fate may be revealed in the future, but for now, this is all we have. The next entry, entitled Games for Kids, introduces Optica Video, a new company producing videos published by Gemini Home Entertainment. The video itself is an informational-style film meant to provide children with games to play, as well as explanations on how said games are played. Hide and seek, freeze tag, and sardines make appearances in the video, with Optica using stick figures to illustrate how the games are appropriately played. Game 4, however, marks the standard shift in tone. The image of a crying face, seen previously in the Lethal Omen crash ending, appears with a low buzzer. A police car is attacked and dragged down by a woodcrawler. We see an arrow pointing towards the sky at a bright red object, what I can only assume to be the iris. And finally, we see a shot of the Earth, with the found you arrow pointing towards the planet, as if from the perspective of a planetary object. With this in mind, it's likely that the bright red object in the night sky is almost assuredly the iris. By the time of this video's creation, the iris has found Earth and is drawing ever closer. Along with this video, we have a product recall sheet that appears to be filled out by an Optica employee in regards to around 150 copies of games for kids. In this form, the employee claims that Optica was not responsible for the creation of this video, that reports of injuries were filed, and that the children began to scream. It seems as though Gemini, or some other force, is purposefully altering these tapes in order to lure children into the forest to be fed upon. This confirms our earliest suspicions that outside forces have been tampering with these tapes. The 10th video, uploaded by Gemini Home Entertainment, is the Advanced Mining Vehicle Production Promotion video. In this short film, the Northern Alberta Mining Development, or NAMAD, is showcasing the latest in mining technology. The Remote-Operated Compact Tunneler, referred to as the ROCT, is a vehicle meant to revolutionize the mining industry. We see the ROCT in action, tunneling down into the depths of the earth, while being told specific functionalities, such as the onboard camera, its status, the depth gauge, the long-lasting battery, and a microphone for detecting hazards, such as running water or nests. As the ROCT reaches a depth of 39 meters, something attacks the rover. At a depth of 145 meters, we begin to see red tendrils infesting the innards of the planet, and the video begins to document the extent of the iris's mutagenic influence. This entry introduces a lot of information and context for these creatures we've been watching, as well as giving us a fan-created name for the glowing-eyed creatures. First off, the ROCT seems to be first attacked by a woodcrawler in the cave system, judging from the sounds of its footsteps. Deeper in the cave, we start to see the red tendrils clinging to the cave stalactite. The message of, the blood pumps through the garden's veins, the crops mature, is definitely referring to the crimson tendrils seen in the cave to some capacity. My question is, are these tendrils the veins of the garden providing it with nutrition, or are they the crops of the garden? The familiar glowing eyes fill the screen once again. The same creatures from the Marianas Trench, from the fields, in the camp informational video, heard in Lethal Omen, and seen here once again, in the garden. Current theories speculate that these creatures are responsible for tending to the garden, with the creatures being named the Gardeners in response. As the ROCT falls and becomes stuck in the red tendrils, we are greeted by the message, shifting tendons shape anatomy, mutation of the heart. To me, this message seems to be referring to the slow mutation of the earth itself. The shifting tendons shaping anatomy could have several different meanings in different contexts. What we see here seems to imply that the earth is being warped from the inside out, that its internal structure is being changed, hence the next line, mutation of the heart. The further the rover goes into the heart of the earth, the more widespread the infestation becomes. Given what we've seen in the Lethal Omen video, it's safe to say that the planet is being mutated from the inside out. Shifting tendons also appeared in Lethal Omen, but in that context seem to be referring to the character's transformation into a woodcrawler instead. Whenever this line is used, it's almost always attached to a mutation of some kind. The final scenes of the video shows a woodcrawler emerging from the cave. Its white legs coming into view before the ROCT begins to fall further and further into the earth, leading up to the ROCT's fall into the earth and during its descent down to over 500 meters. We can hear sounds similar to what we've heard in Lethal Omen after our woodcrawler transformation. The sounds of call and response, of nature itself, of what exactly? Whatever it is supposed to be, we hear it frequently, in the presence of the Iris's creatures. The next entry. A health and safety educational film created by the Warner Area Department of Health details the progression of a strange affliction known as the deep root disease. When showing the viewer how they might contract the disease, we only hear the sounds of a door opening while the individual sleeps. The disease itself can be identified by the bulbs that appear on the skin. The diagnosis section provides information on how to diagnose deep root disease. Symptoms include bulbs on exposed skin, erratic muscle spasms, unrecognizable smells in a home, memory loss, lack of dreaming, and the formation of new bones. Once the disease has spread, Then comes the sprouting stage. The video seems to imply a few things, while also giving background on the nature of this infection. We first hear about deeper disease in Lethal Omen, specifically the hidden room mannequin ending, and the notes found on the floor. The individual writing makes mention of a spot on their neck growing in size, an indication of deeproot. Wilderness Survival Guide makes mention of ripping foreign objects from the body, possibly implying that these roots are inserted into the body. Based on the sounds of rapid footsteps indicative of a wood crawler, we can make the assumption that wood crawlers are responsible for the initial infection. Along with this video, we are shown an image of what appears to be a bulb ripped from the skin of a person, a foreign object taken from their body. After this infection, however, we see one or two symptoms of note that we've seen reappear throughout the series. The first is the erratic muscle spasms. The first time we see this affliction is in World's Weirdest Animals with the fake people. This next is in Lethal Omen, with a fake person screaming for help out in the field, which is then mirrored in the Wilderness Survival Guide. At the end of the guide, we see, once again, the tip of ripping foreign objects from the body, before zooming in on the same spasming person we've seen previously. At this point, it can be assumed that the fake people we've seen throughout the series are subjects in the advanced stages of the deeproot disease. At this stage of the infection, the roots have spread throughout the body, hijacking the body's nervous system and enacting behavioral manipulation. Based on how an infected individual charges at Jack in World's Weirdest Animals, we can assume that the infected individual's primary goal in this stage is to spread the parasitic infection to as many people as it can before the spreading stage begins. This, however, is entirely just a theory. Based on the information we've been given on the nature of the deeproot disease, we can see that the end result of the disease is a drastic mutation. However, what exactly people morph into is not specified in the video. Based on our previous accounts of mutations, we have a couple possible outcomes. Either the individuals mutate into a woodcrawler, as is the case with Mary and the Lethal Omen NPC, and the seemingly violent depiction of growths. The case could be made for transformations into a woodcrawler. However, the case could also be made for a transformation into nature's mockery, given the depictions of the plants with faces of humans inside them, as seen with the enemy NPC in Lethal Omen as well, and in the Wilderness Survival Guide photo. Or, quite possibly, they mutate into something else entirely. Regardless of the outcome, a person in this advanced stage of the disease has no chance of returning. Monthly Progress Report follows a Regnant Computing Progress Report on the internal project known as Project Infrared. This project, active and at 84% completion, is a study of assisted technological progress via artificial computer learning for the following purposes: to predict and prevent future technological failures, and to advance in the field of technological discovery, especially in computer processing and memory. The report itself is split up into 4 sections: computer processing, predictive advancement, failure avoidance, and ACL communication. Computer processing details the advancements in the graphical capabilities of Regnant computers, showcasing assets for the upcoming Lethal Omen video game. Predictive advancement details the use of the AI to run simulations on technological advancements, giving the company insight into ways of surpassing all technological competitors in terms of graphical capabilities, RAM, and processing power. Failure avoidance again uses the same AI to run simulations to somehow avoid 23 technological failures in RegNet's future. This AI would have to be quite advanced to make predictions such as these, and to provide the company with insight into technological advancements. In these last two sections, we see repeated mention of the client, who is yet to be named. All we know for sure at this point is that the client is active. In the final section, ACL communication, a few of our questions regarding this AI finally receive answers. This final section reveals a lot of information pertaining to the motives of RegNet computing and their revolutionary methods of advancing in technology. First, we see that there are 3 computer systems infested with the red vine-like structures. We've seen these tendrils in the advanced mining vehicle video. These, along with the similarly infested antenna, appear to act as a conduit for communicating with what I would assume is the iris. Metal rods are embedded in the ceiling of the cave system, with the red tendrils wrapping around them and forming a circle. In that circle, a bright orange light, as if it's a physical manifestation of the iris's consciousness on Earth. We see on the screen the prompt of Earth, and after some readying from the speaker, we see iteration 1417 appear on the screen. This alone lets us know that the revolutionary AI that RegNet Computing has been boasting about is possibly the iris itself, or something within its sphere of influence. Instead of fictional stories and simulations, the iris is giving them information, regardless of its cryptic and obscure means of doing so. Mary sees the gateway die. Sleeping ones are eaten whole. The vessel floats into the maw. The jaw unhinges. The first iteration seems to indicate that Saturn, or perhaps the rings of Saturn, have been destroyed. Whether this is a physical destruction or the destruction of its cosmic properties is not quite clear. Sleeping ones are eaten whole. The vessel floats into the maw. The jaw unhinges. Given how cryptic the ACL iterations were, I cannot say for certain how much of this is literal and how much of this is more metaphorical. If we take it as literal, then we could point towards the deep root disease video, specifically the person pulled from their bed by a woodcrawler, and in this instance, eaten whole. A more figurative approach is the vessel fed to the garden itself, and the lines personifying the garden as an animal rather than a collection of plants. Alternatively, the maw could be the iris itself. New things roam the feeding grounds, likely a straightforward reference to the reopening of Moonlight Acres, the campers being their livestock for the garden. The Harbinger guards in vain, seeming to imply that Harbinge Technologies is a more benevolent corporation aiming to protect humanity and guard it against the mutagenic nature of the iris. Mary hears a creaking sound. The hungry eye is welcome. It's clear that whoever is being stalked is no longer with us. This is Jack is seemingly no longer with us. Instead, he is with the iris now. That places this video after his disappearance, likely October of the same year. By this point, he would have been missing for around 5 months. What is truly ominous, however, is Regnad's expectation of beating their client in as little as 7 months. This leaves little doubt that the images of the iris hovering above the Earth we've seen in other videos are in fact the future of this reality. Preceding this video, an image was posted to YouTube. It appears to be an advert by Moonlight Acres, asking for a professional videographer to record their staff's Christmas Eve party. We can begin to piece together some crucial information needed to better understand Jack and Mary's story. The Moonlight Acres Family Camp 1985 Christmas Eve Party, videographed by Jack and Mary Dean, confirming that the story told in the ACL video is likely based in reality. One name of note is Barry Johnson, a person we know to have eventually become a vessel. Our establishing shots show a snowy and forested landscape, the sounds of Christmas music, and the quiet forest filling our ears. As the final photographs roll, we see a horrifying monster on full display with a single name: Mary. Given that Mary is credited as a videographer, it's possible that this Christmas Eve party directly precedes her transformation seen in the artificial computer learning video, and set Jack down the path of investigating the anomalous events taking place on Earth. This entry reinforces a lot of what we know and what we had assumed previously. Throughout the video, we hear the woodcrawler mimicking the voices it has stolen, what sounds like a child saying "Help, Mom" can be heard prior to an unearthly screech. We see what appears to be the tendrilled foot of a woodcrawler before the sounds of screaming and roaring. Later, we see the woodcrawler above the cabin. Knocking is heard, as woodcrawlers are known to do. The sections, spoken in reverse, reveal the following. Against the window, we can see tendril-like things pressed against the glass, and by the second time, it seems that all hell has broken loose, as the entity lets out a garbled scream as the partygoers begin to panic. I would assume that after this, Jack and Mary fled, with Mary ultimately mutating into something else entirely. And finally, once more, we see a shot of what I can only assume is a woodcrawler. What intrigues me about this shot, however, are the tendril-like appendages that are coming out of its mouth, I think. They look fairly similar to the deep root disease bulbs in the sprouting stage, appearing to be enlarged versions of these bulbs, as if signaling the complete stage of the deep root disease, or ways of infecting individuals. This, however, is just speculation, but I feel the similarity should be noted. Home invasion, created by Gemini and Optica Video, details what to do in the event of a home invasion. Along with this video being released, a photo is posted onto the Gemini YouTube channel. It appears to show the red filament tendrils seeping through what appears to be cracks in concrete, with the note H12. As the video begins, slow and ominous music plays as bright red text appears over a darkened city street. At around the 1 minute and 75 second mark, the video takes a predictable turn, and one thing becomes clear. This video was not made for humans. Let's start from the beginning. The text, specifically referring to knocking and percussive noises to draw victims closer to the glass, as well as the burrowing underneath the foundation of homes, seem to be aimed primarily at woodcrawlers and other anomalous entities. We've seen these behaviors repeatedly in the past. Next, the video gives directions upon entering into the home, specifically locating, incapacitating, then entering the prey via proboscis. Proboscis, or also pronounced proboscis, can refer to the human nose, particularly large noses. The more common definition refers to any long, flexible snout of an animal or any various elongated or extensible tubular processes of the oral region of an invertebrate. Think of butterflies or moths, or of gastropods, something we've seen in the mouths of woodcrawlers such as Mary. Either way, the woodcrawlers are entering into their prey. We then cut to footage of someone filming the home, with the assumption that this is Jack Dean yet again. The home itself appears to be the same one seen in World's Weirdest Animals, and towards the end of the Wilderness Survival Guide. The rapid tapping of a woodcrawler's appendages let us know that the house is far from safe, yet Jack doesn't seem too keen on leaving. The red tendrils, seen within the caves and on the Regnat personal computers, are seemingly infecting this home as well. Two human-like figures comprised of the fleshy red tendrils stand in one room, their vague outlines distinguishable in the red filaments. A third is seen sitting in a chair, motionless with a singular eye, that, after Jack causes a floorboard to creak, looks towards him. This seems to imply that this vaguely human-looking entity is alive and sentient. Heading towards the stairs, we once again see the red filaments coating the walls, before we see the shadow of a woodcrawler. We can hear, once again, the sounds of nature heard routinely throughout the series, distorting as Jack runs from the entity. He falls, and we see the creature overtake him, as his screams fill our ears. And Jack is no more. If we roll with the theory that fake people are infected with deep-root disease, which could be reinforced by the note of entering a host earlier in the video, then a possible end scenario for those infected could be physical degradation and integration into the garden's veins. This still leaves a lot of questions. How did Mary become a woodcrawler? How were nature's mockery actually created? Are these all theorized outcomes of deep-root disease entirely dependent on the person infected? Given how close together the shambling NPC from Lethal Omen and the Nature's Mockery are, surely they're related. And with Mary, her transformation seemed extremely quick compared to the slow process of deep-root disease. Perhaps the transformation into a woodcrawler is a different mutation entirely. Right as I begin to finally piece together the final parts of this video, I was greeted by the notification that Gemini had uploaded once again. And let me say, this video is quite the bombshell. This time, taking us back to outer space and following the Crusader probe as it travels to the outermost reaches of our solar system, capturing images of the gas giants along its way. As is customary, the video begins to detail the anomalous events as they unfolded during the probe's 12-year-long journey to the edges of our system. At around the 50-second mark, the video cuts away from the informational video and into what is known as the Crusader Incident Timeline. This timeline outlines the events that led up to and during this incident. June 1982. The Crusader approaches Jupiter, snapping photos of the planet and its moons up to August 12, 1982. December 1985. Crusader approaches Saturn, December 5th through January 30th. Photos of the gas giants and its moons are shown. But, as we reach Neptune, in November of 1991, something seems amiss. This video reveals a lot about the state of the solar system and about how the iris itself functions. First off, let's address the fact that Neptune itself is missing. By this point, it seems to be moving through the solar system, acting as an acolyte for the iris and spreading the cosmic entity's mutagenic properties. We are shown one of Uranus's moons, latching onto and mutating one of Jupiter's moons, implying that Uranus, or at least its moons, have been mutated by this point. As the Crusader approaches the iris, we see its moons. One, aptly named Cyst, appears to be two celestial bodies merged together. Another is Umbilic, moon of another celestial body named Vitreous. This word, vitreous, is a reference to the human eye, and a gel-like substance that accounts for around 80% of an eye's volume. Macula is similarly related to the eye, being an oval-shaped pigmented area near the center of the retina. Then we see Vitreous, shown to be yet another moon of the iris. It seems that the iris is on the move, as the Crusader probe felt an unexpected shift in gravity that pulled it inside the iris itself. This journey into the depths of the celestial body helps us to better understand the biology of this living planet. The planet itself is biological in nature, not so much purely relying on eldritch magic, but a thing of biological basis. Probably not a biology we know or understand, but biological nonetheless. We know that the iris has an esophageal. We see white sacs attached to red, strand-like organic matter, not too dissimilar from the red tendrils we've seen on Earth. We hear something inside this part of the body, implying that whatever it is inside these sacs, or whatever it is roaming this area, is alive. We hear deep, guttural noises as the Crusader descends deeper into the conscious mind of the iris. Suddenly, the iris is sending back images from Earth. A man sleeping in a bed, as a red, tendril-like entity stands over him as he sleeps, taking place over a 3-day period. These dates are crucial and are by no means an accident. May 6th through 9th, 1993. You know what else spans those dates? Jack Dean's image visualization session, appearing to be almost the exact same room he slept in during the sleep image visualizer video. Suddenly, we flash forward to October 24th, 1993, no doubt occurring just a few days prior to monthly progress report. Well, I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at, given the sound that plays. I can only assume that it correlates with the ACL communication and the monthly progress report, as a similar sound plays while connecting with the speaker. Regnad told us that they plan to meet their client within the next 7-month period, and as May rolls around, the iris looms ever closer. To summarize the video in a few short sentences, the iris is biological in nature, being some sort of cosmic entity spreading its mutation throughout the universe. By the end of the video, we know that the iris's mutagenic influence has spread to other planets and its satellites. This video finally provides us with some sort of timeline of events for Jack and for the iris's approach to the Earth. And that is the series so far, leaving us with a plethora of burning questions that need answers. So much of the series is vague and left up to interpretation, with straight answers appearing few and far between. Again, take what I say and my opinions with a grain of salt. This is simply my own interpretation based upon what I personally took from the videos, and could, in reality, be completely wrong in many respects. With that out of the way, let's take a look at my proposed series of events. At some point in this history, a rogue planetary cosmic entity made its way into the edges of our system. This entity, later known as the Iris, began to mutate Neptune, the furthest planet from the Sun. After the successful mutation of Neptune, the Iris used the celestial body as a lens to focus its energy through. This energy would, in theory, pass through the rings of Saturn, or the Gateway, in order to reach the innermost parts of the solar system. Jupiter historically passed in front of this beam, leaving an open wound on the planet, in the form of the Great Red Spot. This gives the indication that the Iris has been in the system for well over 350 years. The Iris, through means unknown, eventually learned of the Earth's existence and the life that existed on it. At this point, it set its sights on humanity and began sending woodcrawlers to Earth as well. The creatures began to nest beneath the surface, appearing to have some aversion to sunlight, rarely surfacing during the day, being more active at night. By the time of the series, it seems as though the creatures, known to the community as gardeners, have spread out throughout the planet with the assistance of woodcrawlers and a strange plant known as nature's mockery. Deep inside the earth, they began to mutate the planet from the inside out, spreading its garden from the deepest depths of the planet up to the surface, and eventually, in due time, will cover the planet. Animals, specifically humans, appear to be the primary form of nourishment for both the garden and the creatures sent to Earth. People begin to go missing. A strange affliction, later known as the deep-root disease, begins to spread from person to person, and false imitations prop up from time to time. By the 1930s, campers at the Moonlight Acres family campgrounds began to spread rumors of strange creatures in the forests, of mythical skinwalkers stealing the voices of people and replacing them with fakes. Some campers become infected with the deep-root disease, having no idea that their body is slowly mutating. Lights in the sky begin to appear, drawing more and more people to the campgrounds to witness this strange event. Strange, well-dressed men start making the rounds, entering the admin's cabins for years on end, until they struck a deal, and the men left for good. Over the years, as more strange events occurred all over the globe, specifically at Moonlight Acres, corporate and governmental entities became aware of the Iris and its influence. Two competing factions began to arise during this time. Harbinge Technologies, attempting to slow the Iris's steady mutation of the planet and protect the vulnerable population, and Regnad Computing, a corporation obsessed with progress and innovation, to the point of actively helping the Iris. In the middle of these two factions is Gemini Home Entertainment, the twins in astrology, representing the duality of the competing companies, publishing videos from a variety of sources, regardless of content. From August through December of 1982, the Crusader probe drew closer to Jupiter, snapping photographs of the planet and its moons. During the Moonlight Acres Christmas Eve party of 1985, a woodcrawler attacks the camp staff party, no doubt infecting and or killing some of the staff present. This is our introduction to Jack and Mary Dean. As the pair are fleeing from the ensuing attack, Mary is subsequently mutated into a woodcrawler herself. As Jack flees, he can hear the Iris speaking to him before he takes shelter in a Harbinge bunker, waiting for the attack to pass, and mourning the loss of Mary. Overlapping with this period, the Crusader probe approaches Saturn and its moons from December 5th of 1985 through January 30th of 1986. In 1989, a separate probe, the Voyager 2, snaps photographs of Neptune where the knowledge of its mutation likely stems. Between 1989 and November of 1991, Neptune moves from its original orbit, infecting planets and moons with the Iris's mutagenic properties, as it ventures further into the solar system towards Saturn. In 1992, the Crusader probe approached the moons of Iris. Sometime in the early 90s, Regnad Computing began working with the Iris in order to better accelerate their technological growth and outperform their competitors. This company managed to establish a direct link with the Iris itself by utilizing the veins of the garden to create a sort of speaker. This entity, which Regnad refers to as artificial computer learning, begins to learn the complexities of human language and writes, quote, fictional stories. Though, as we know, these stories and the information being given are far from fictional. Instead, recounting specific events that occurred to Jack and Mary Dean, and no doubt to others. As Regnad refines its connection to the Iris, I also hypothesize that Harbinge began working in conjunction with other companies, helping to facilitate the creation of the ROCT to help locate underground nests as well as create a safer mining environment, all for the purpose of studying the anomalous creatures. Utilizing their knowledge gained while collaborating with Nemad, Harbinge began working in deep-sea operations as well, hence the sound of the albedo alarm during Deep Blue, alerting the craft operators of the Gardener's presence in the Challenger Deep. Their collaboration with other companies and governmental entities is done in order to study the anomalous entities and the Iris itself, to find ways of protecting the world at large. Harbinge gets to work testing its sieve over the course of several months, December 1992 through June of 1993, testing on several individuals such as Jack Dean, who slept for 3 days from May 6th to May 9th. During this, the company got flashes of the future, a future of the Iris's arrival to Earth. As explained, Harbinge is using this technology to understand the Iris's influence on Earth, as well as using the visualizer as a method for detecting individuals infected by the deep-root disease, as all recordings of dreams become property of Harbinge. This only works because those infected with deep-root disease cannot dream. Overlapping with the sieve testing and recordings, the Crusader probe is tugged by a sudden gravitational pull. From January through February of 1993, Crusader enters into the Iris's depths, unlocking the biological secrets of the Eldritch entity before going radio silent until May. During the early part of 1993, Jack Dean, going by the stage name of Jack Wilder, began working on his wilderness survival guide. In this guide, he gives tips for surviving in the wilderness and how to best deal with the Iris's monstrosities, including woodcrawlers, nature's mockery, and fake people. He encounters a fake person screaming in the field in an attempt to lure people towards it, either to infect it with deep-root or for some other purpose. This seemingly leads directly into some of his footage that was spliced into World's Weirdest Animals, wherein Jack documents a woodcrawler infestation of a rural home. Inside, he documents 3 individuals possibly infected with deep-root disease, as well as the woodcrawler inhabiting the home. After being charged, Jack leaves. This documentary would premiere in early May of 1993. From May 6th to May 9th of the same year, Jack initiated the sieve, which resulted in his sleeping for 3 full days. During this time, a red-tendrilled fake person stood watch over his body. Upon his waking and possible encounter with a red-tendrilled entity, Jack returns to the house, showing the veins of the garden spreading throughout the home, feasting upon the mutated remnants of the 3 individuals in the house. Jack isn't careful enough though, as the woodcrawler he witnessed prior began chasing him through the house, resulting in his apparent death, or worse. A newspaper article reporting on his disappearance would later be published, showing us that his disappearance occurred in early May of 1993. In June of 1993, Moonlight Acres abruptly canceled their yearly Lights in the Sky event after the disappearance of Jordan Barnes, which resulted in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police beginning an investigation into the camp and into the disappearance of Jordan. Given the police car and the individual in question using a weapon, I would assume we play through Lethal Omen as a police officer investigating the disappearance of Jordan, which ultimately results in the officer's demise, either through transformation into a woodcrawler at the hands of an emerging Iris-centered cult, or through some other means. Based on what I can make out from the articles detailing Jordan and Jack's disappearances, it seems as though disappearances are happening at an increasing rate all over Canada and the United States. By October of 1993, the camp reopened, promising a safer Moonlight Acres. While all of these events are transpiring, Regnant continues their technological development and their communication with the Iris, as evidenced in their monthly progress report in October of 1993. Assets for their upcoming video game Lethal Omen, based on the events that had unfolded at Moonlight Acres, are shown to display their advancements in the field of computer graphics. By this point, the iterations have reached into the thousands, with the latest being iteration 1417. The Iris, or the entity speaking on its behalf, notes that our mutated Mary witnesses the death of the Gateway, likely due to the Iris's mutagenic properties. Based on what these iterations say, Harbinge Technologies is trying in vain to protect humanity, and that the Iris and all of its mutated monstrosities are slowly consuming the planet from the inside out. The iteration ends, revealing that Jack has become part of the Iris. This report ends with Regnant revealing that the Iris will arrive to Earth within 7 months. Based on the articles of Jordan and Jack, as the Iris draws closer, more and more people are disappearing. In these intervening months, companies like Optica Video began reporting discrepancies in their products, noting that videos like Games for Kids were not actually created by the company, and they are unsure of how or why they were created. The Iris's influence likely had something to do with the spliced-in sections of Games for Kids, with the end goal being to lure susceptible children into the woods. In the Games for Kids tape, a bright red object can be seen in the sky, marking the Iris's eventual arrival, and with the end of the video stating, "Found you," it seems to indicate that the Iris is all but inevitable. Finally, the current timeline ends in May of 1994. The Crusader probe comes back online, showing its approach to Earth from the inside of the Iris. Regnad's lethal Omen releases sometime prior to the Iris's arrival. The fate of the world seems grim. Moonlight Acres reopens, and once again becomes a cattle farm for all of the monstrosities the Iris has sent. The mutation of Earth has begun spreading to the surface, and the Iris itself is arriving to Earth. The Iris's end goal is unknown, but the world as we know it will come to a horrifying end. Jack and Mary are gone, Harbinge guards in vain, and the Iris looms above our planet, laughing at our destruction and our slow and steady mutation. We are left with several unanswered questions as of the making of this video. We have no clear correlation between some of the events and creatures to what is shown in the video. We know that nature's mockery is created from humans, but how we get to this point is unclear. We know that Mary mutated into a woodcrawler, but how we got to this point is unclear. My best assumption is that different types of woodcrawlers accomplish different things, with the smallest variants of the woodcrawlers carrying a weaker mutagen that we have come to know as deep-root disease, while the larger variants are capable of fully mutating humans into woodcrawlers, with the nature's mockery being a sort of middle ground result. That's my best guess at least. It's also possible that woodcrawlers infect individuals with deeper disease, while gardeners, upon looking into the eye, will mutate individuals into woodcrawlers. Maybe the different outcomes are based on if a person accepts or rejects the Iris's influence. That could give some grounding to the cult ritual ending of Lethal Omen, with the player character transforming into a woodcrawler after accepting the Iris and becoming a sacrifice in the ritual. I hope that in the future, we are able to receive some clarity to some of our burning questions, as well as closure to this fascinating story spanning several different mediums. My praise goes to Remy Abode, the creator of the series. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to seeing what you create in the future. Hey everyone, Sinister here. Thank you for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this, as I definitely enjoyed trying something new. I received quite a few requests to do a video on an ARG, with some suggesting Gemini, so I thought, what the hell, why not give it a shot? I played around with my voice quite a bit, as you can almost definitely tell from the video. I got a lot of feedback about my narrations in previous videos, so I tried changing it up, tried to make it fit with the theme and the style of the video. I also had really bad allergies like halfway through, so I had to adjust my narration and just kind of power through and try my best with some of the narrations to stay somewhat on schedule to get this out at a decent time. All in all, I'm enjoying the series so far. I spent several days just racking my brain trying to put a puzzle together when I don't have all of the pieces, and making educated guesses on where I think the missing pieces will be. I appreciate you sticking around through this rambling and that you found some of the information somewhat insightful. Once again, my praise goes to Remy Abode for creating this fascinating and overarching series. I hope to see more content soon, and I wish you the best in your future videos. If you all enjoyed this examination of Gemini, please let me know. I'd love to cover more ARGs in the future, and getting feedback from you all will help let me know if I should continue to cover these or move on to other projects. If you think I should do more ARGs or horror-related content, what do you think I should do next? Once again, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video.